Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Scenestalking podcast, the podcast where we discuss the impacts filming locations have had on the UK tourism industry. In this episode, we're continuing our exploration of screen tourism, this time focusing on one of the UK's most globally influential TV series. You may have heard of it. It's Downton Abbey.
I want every surface in this house to gleam and sparkle.
The post's just arrived, my lord.
Heaven.
What is it?
The King and Queen are coming to stay.
What?
We'll be looking at two key locations, the village of Bampton, which doubled as the Downton Village, and of course the mighty Highclere Castle in Hampshire, the gorgeous rural setting of the Crawley family home. I had the chance to visit Bampton recently to see the fictional location of Downton for myself. Like other filming locations I've visited for this project, I felt as though I was walking through a film set. One of the key Downton locations in Bampton is St Mary's Church, where the characters of Mary and Matthew get married in the series. Upon entering the magnificent structure, I was lucky enough to meet Simon Galloway, the church warden, who claims he never really got into the series, but has seen the impact it's had on the Oxfordshire village.
I'm not a fan of the series or the films, but it's been very beneficial. There have been some complaints. One of my neighbours didn't want people taking selfies inside her garden, and the coaches for a time were parking in a way that blocked.
Well, folks, without further ado, let's call into our very special guest today. I'm joined by Lady Carnarvon herself, the 8th Countess of Carnarvon, who is in charge of all affairs at Highclere Castle, the fictional home of the Crawley family, in the iconic British historical drama. Miss Carnarvon, it's great to have you on. What an honour.
Hello, good morning.
So, my first question, how has Downton Abbey transformed visitor numbers and global awareness of Highclere Castle since the series first aired?
Bruno, I think the thing is, it's not so much about the visitor numbers, because before or after Downton Abbey, we can only have the same number of people through the castle on the tour. You can't suddenly have many more people. So, and you can only work so many days a year because you've got a wonderful team here who otherwise it'd be far too much for them. So what it has done is highlighted the marketing, and that's what has been revolutionary, because it's exposed us to a global audience. That is extraordinary. Having said that, Downton Abbey don't hashtag us or include us. So we have to fight our own way forward, which is hard work, but really interesting, and I enjoy it, to make sure that people recognise that Downton Abbey is really Highclere Castle. And step by step and year by year, I think we are achieving that, which then means that I can welcome different tours, tell different stories, look at other ways of how we can bring people in.
Would you describe the impact of screen tourism on Highclere Castle as long-term sustainable benefit, or something that requires careful management over time as a gradual process?
I think it's I think it always requires encouragement. I wish to make it long-term sustainably. It's in 1922 the 5th Earl of Carnarvon discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun, front page news, and he was the man of the moment for the next 10 years and possibly onwards, but they weren't trying to market it. With this, again, we've got an opportunity to become part of the swirling media for journalists or whatever else, and with that, I'm obviously trying to sustain it and pick out and pull out storylines or anchors that will reference here. And then from that, also with all the books that I've written, develop other anchors, because I wrote the books because I realized that Highclere otherwise doesn't benefit in terms of business from Downton Abbey. All the money goes back to NBC Universal. So it's trying to figure out different ways of kind of putting your elbows out to find a place in the marketplace.
And that's fascinating about the Tutankhamun aspect, the tomb of Tutankhamun.
Well, I've studied it for ages, and one of my books was about it. And luckily, I didn't write that book first. Actually, I wrote Amina about his wife first. So it's been really wonderful writing a little bit more about the women, not just the men. So that's also been really, really good.
Highclere Castle as a visitor destination, how do you balance preserving the historical integrity, because there's so much history rooted there, with accommodating the increased tourism driven by Downton Abbey?
Well, I think it's a different sort of tourism, which is actually the point of your whole thesis. So it's just not those who just like, history museums and school trips, whatever else. It is those people who are fallen in love with a TV program and Lady Mary or Anna, whoever they've fallen in love with. So I think we are both. I hope we are both. And I've just greeted a group of people outside the castle, and very excited to be here. They know us through Downton Abbey and as Highclere now. And one of the first things I said is there's been a home here since 749 AD. So it's that sense of continuity, telling stories, and that's what they wanted to hear. Then they can go and see where Maggie Smith stood in the library.
Absolutely. Have you noticed a shift in the types of visitors arriving since Downton Abbey, particularly in terms of the international audiences?
Definitely more international, and I'm terribly grateful to be part of it for that, because in this country we have so little money that we're all fighting very hard for the hard-won pennies that we're all trying to earn, and which the politicians appear to be taking away from us as fast as we earn them. So to have a much more global approach is my only way out, and that's why I try to publish our events 7 months, 9 months ahead of time, so that people are booking their holidays, Bruno, and they're thinking of where to come, they can book and lock that in. So I'm very conscious of that.
And is it more younger audiences, do you think, as well? Do you see more younger?
I think it welcomes everybody at different times of year. So at the moment, as the bank holidays, is a lot of coach visitors, and they're important. They're people's grannies, or they live in Weston-super-Mare or Newcastle, or they're coming down from the north. They're having a lovely day out, and they're perhaps the traditional people we've welcomed for years anyway. And yesterday we just had a coach day to make sure we looked after that segment of the population, our population, for whom this is a really nice day out. In other months of the year, when we have guided tours or focusing on different aspects, whether it's of Downton Abbey or the gardens, the shift in the market changes, as does the age. My Instagram is interesting because that's 50% is sort of 25 to 45, which is blooming fantastic. So I think because we're a bit bonkers and a bit fun, people appreciate that and come into it. So you don't want to be too staid and museum-like, because I always remember when my little son, who's now rather much taller than me, when we were going to somewhere in Italy, so not a museum, mummy, there's an Apple store over there. And I said, first the museum, then the Apple store. So it's trying not to have that sense of just being like the museum and not the Apple store. So I'm conscious of that, and there's different, ways of trying to engage.
Yeah, I suppose it's nice as well, because I don't think, would you say that without Downton Abbey, you wouldn't particularly get those younger demographics, would you?
I don't know. I hope I would have worked at them in different ways, as other houses do today. We used to do many more weddings. We do many less weddings. We do many more tours. So I'm then marketing to go and bring the business in. Whereas if you're waiting for a wedding, you're marketing and hoping somebody might want to come and get married here. So I prefer. I'm a very boring accountant. I trained as a chartered accountant. I'm a very boring accountant, but I prefer certainty in terms of cash flow. There is no secret stash of money. I don't know. I mean, all you can do is just try different things and see what appeals. I'm always doing that.
Good. To what extent then has Downton Abbey contributed to the local economy beyond the castle?
After COVID and we started up again, some of the local taxi drivers just said, "Oh God, thank you, Lady Carnarvon." So that meant a lot. They're still going to charge me a fortune for coming here, but never mind. I think a lot of people, we encourage people to come by train. We encourage people to book ahead. We encourage people to stay locally. I want to, in fact, I've got a blog I write every Monday, and I'd like to develop a travel section around that, and a travel section in Egypt around that too. So those, it without a doubt, it helps. The thing is, I'm never ever trying to have everything. I'm merely trying to share, Bruno. So if you go out, at the center of everything I try and do is about collaboration, partnership, cooperation, kindness. And sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it does. But you know what? That's the culture that I care about. And everyone who works here with me shares it, and they understand the ethos behind what we're trying to do. So in fact, it's not about money, though we need enough money to pay the salaries each month. It's about something different. I can't really explain it to you, but I always wanted to make people fall in love with the castle. So it's about different things which come together. So it's
Certainly working, yeah, absolutely. Was Highclere prepared for the scale of the attention that the series brought, or did you require to adapt more the infrastructure and planning?
People wanted more tours and less weddings, so that was fine. And you react to that. I've always wanted to do charity events and welcome people here to raise money for others, so that's been jolly useful. It's the same castle. We adapted the tour route. COVID was an enormous learning curve, in terms of developing our online booking system, of the vouchering, the transfers, of all that we needed to do to be more resilient. We had started going to online booking because we realized that we needed to capture some of the overseas market who wanted to know they could come to Highclere on a day. So some of what you've done by chance, by good luck, by hard work. Looking back, it may seem planned, but some of it is just kind of lucky, Bruno. But as I go on now, experience and getting older is really good news. And as I said, in COVID, I think I learned in 3 years what might have taken me 15 years to learn. It was just so intense and so stressful and so awful, and yet such a learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely. COVID was huge. Yeah, I feel like the lockdown allowed people to binge their favorite TV series, binge their favorite films. And then when the lockdown ended, the screen tourism involved with what they'd seen in lockdown was massive. I think there was a massive spike in screen tourism after the lockdown. So do you think Highclere's success could be replicated by other heritage sites as well, or is it unique due to the scale?
I spoke at a Heritage Filming Alliance. I was just doing a podcast with them yesterday. In fact, they're more English Heritage and National Trust. Again, it's my desire to go outwards, and we're all in the same business, so that's kind of fine. And it's what was unusual is that Downton Abbey, like I suppose the closest predecessor would be Upstairs Downstairs of the 1970s, whenever that was put out. I can't remember. I was definitely quite little at the time, so but I remember my parents watching it, and it had that house at the centre of it, in that case in London. And this has a house at the centre of it through which the characters come in and out. Many other ones, like Bridgerton, have multiple locations. So they are less well grounded, but the characters are what you follow, and you see some sumptuous interiors which don't anchor you as much as perhaps Downton Abbey. So I think that's what's curious, is for some fluke and lucky fluke, we have become synonymous. And rather than, I can never think about fighting anything. It's just trying to go with the flow, because it's a much better way to go, and pick it up and then just use the flow to carry Highclere on, go with the river, sail with the river. So I don't know. It's going to depend on the writers and script. And the answer is, I'm sure other things will come along. And at the same time as Downton Abbey, people loved, I think, Game of Thrones, which I haven't sadly seen. I think it was quite violent or something. I'm not quite sure. And I like Cinderella and Notting Hill and Happy Things, because the world outside is so bloody challenging. I just want Love Actually, or things like that. That's my choice. And Downton Abbey, to some extent, was that. I mean, there were some challenging scenes in it, which were pretty difficult, and points of contention. But overall, the house held people, and you got the sense of there was hope for the future.
I suppose I don't need to ask whether you've met the cast. I'm sure you're very friendly with them.
They never lived here. Our bedroom was at the front, and I wrote a book called A Year at Highclere, where I was trying to regale you all with stories about living here with the film crew and looking out over the front gravel. I mean, as the trucks rolled up. So it's really about white van car park, I think, rather than anything else, than people in pin colours. But it was amazing. And it was also really nice to meet the crew, because Bruno, they work all the bloody hours that God sends. They don't have the glamour or the paychecks, and they're the ones who create the glamour and the paychecks for those in front of the camera. So I guess being typically British, you support the underdog.
Yes.
I'm sure you do too, but yeah.
100%. Oh, that's lovely. Have there been any challenges then on the other side? Have there been any challenges or downsides associated with the popularity of the show, such as overcrowding or increased maintenance demands?
No, because the maintenance is the maintenance. I suppose in terms of the maintenance, one of the challenges is some specific chattels, such as the rugs, because with more footfall, it was designed as a home, not a venue. And so they had started to disintegrate long before Downton. Downton and their filming crew didn't always help, and we ended up asking them if they had to board over some of our floors and rugs, not just Correc. So we had a lot more protection needed. So there is some maintenance with more footfall, and it's not overcrowding, because I know how many people can have a day. I sell that many tickets and then I stop, and I'm not going to sell any more, because I've got a really precious team of family who work with me here, pulling it off each day to make people feel welcome. And I'm not going to have an extra 100 people, which then squidges everybody and worries the guides or makes Louis' team feel too tired. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I remember in my research, I read that the screen tourism, the income actually covered a lot of the costs for repairs.
Screen tourism is just visitors coming across the house. We had done a lot of repairs in 2003, 2005, 2007. Those were our big repair years for the roof.
Before Downton, that's interesting.
So they always give themselves credit for what I don't think they should have credit for, but I'm very happy to give them credit for what they should have credit for. I fight for Highclere.
100%, absolutely. So if Downton Abbey, then, if that had stayed that way, if it had never been filmed at Highclere, how different do you think the castle's public profile and financial position would be?
Well, the wedding business, it was as good a pie chart to have weddings here as it is to have visitors. So it's a different pie chart of business. Without a doubt, the global recognition would have been less. Having said that, just before Downton came out, Geordie and I had finished turning the cellars of Highclere into a celebration, an exhibition devoted to the 5th Earl of Carnarvon and Tutankhamun, and we were just beginning to wind up the press for Tutankhamun, which is without doubt the biggest global event, perhaps, in 1922, with one of the most famous iconic face masks in the world. So we'd have taken different paths. I hope we would have been completely useless. We've taken a very different path, which has definitely given us this extraordinary petrol run to a very steep angle, which has definitely given me more grey hairs and more wrinkles. But, you grab the opportunities in front of you. And like the other houses, many of whom are very successful, you just figure out your different paths. And equally, we try and share all our success with Downton Abbey with any other houses who want to add on tours, come here, go there. It's whatever you can do to help. But some people with big houses don't want or need that many people across the door. They're really trying to curate a few people. I mean, there's famously the house that starred as Saltburn isn't open at all to the public. So when that went as a film and then people wanted to come to Saltburn, the real house, that was a disaster for them, and they said they might never have done the film. So, I mean, it's just different ways. I mean, what worked for Downton Abbey and Highclere is the fact we have long been open to the public. So we are open. There was a TV series and film here, and the two came together, and we flowed and sped up on the river. So without doubt, they cranked up our speed of recognition, which was amazing. You can't beat an hour on ITV every Sunday night.
And there was a noticeable financial impact after the show.
Revenues increased. We just did less weddings and more tours.
It was more steady then. It was less of a spike, I suppose.
Before Downton Abbey arrived on the scene, we could have 1,000 people a day. After Downton Abbey arrived on the day, we'd have 1,000 people a day. There's no difference. Before Downton Abbey arrived on the scene, I used to actually do a few big days for charity, which was both good for us and good for the air ambulance. I'd have 8,000 people to raise money for the Thames Valley Air Ambulance before Downton Abbey. huge days. It was great fun. We did some fantastic work with Ferrari, etc., and everyone loves Ferrari. So I'd have perhaps 8,000 people. Then perhaps we wouldn't do anything for 2 or 3 days because bloody hell, that was a big day. So now, after Downton Abbey, I don't try and have 8,000 because that would be a nightmare on top of everything else that we're doing. So it's just different, actually. So the screen tourism is a different route to marketing. And then what's far more valuable to Highclere, other than the fact that I love welcoming visitors, is Highclere Castle Gin, Friends of Highclere, the books that I've written. It's the add-on. So with Downton Abbey, you see the TV episodes, but in the background for them, the merchandising is really important. And you'll see all their Instagram accounts selling merchandising. So all those merchandise sales all around America with people saying, I can't remember some of Maggie Smith's wit or their books, that's done really well for them as well. That is still going on. We don't share in that at all. I asked them if we could because it's our stately overdraft, and they said no.
Interesting. It's interesting, the correlation, I suppose, between what is down.
There's a lot more sophistication and subtlety to it all. But you know what, Bruno? We're very lucky to be Downton Abbey, and there's no two ways about it. And I'm very proud of everyone who works here with me because we've worked bloody hard to make the best of being Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey would probably rather we were quiet and quiescent because they could own it all, but that's not my spirit.
Yeah, no, loud and proud, yeah, 100%. Looking ahead, do you see the role of screen tourism evolving for historic states like Highclere Castle? Or?
I think it's brilliant. I think it's completely different. I think it's wonderful. It brings from imagination to reality, and it links the two together. So I love books because in a book you read it and your mind works to get into the book and follow the characters through. TV and film are a little bit more passive, but then nevertheless there is a link between books and TV and reality. And I think it's a fantastic way of sharing and encouraging people to explore a little bit of what's the real history. Downton Abbey is a costume drama. It's not real, but it's a great way of bringing people in. And, I said I'm working with a tourist heritage filming industry just to figure out how we can all exploit and share and understand and do better. And then I work with many tour groups and coach groups who are able to be in business, Bruno, because they're bringing people here who've watched Downton Abbey. So that is amazing. So that's lovely.
One last thing, it is incredible global recognition, not just national. One last thing about the downsides. I went to visit Bampton recently in Oxfordshire, which was used as a lot of scenes. The village and the church, and I was talking to the church warden, and one of the things he said on the perhaps negative side is that the day trippers, the coaches, they all roll in the morning, and they can cause a lot of congestion. There's a lot more people in the town. It's very much more busy, overcrowding almost. I just wanted to. What your perspective on that?
I think that is a lot harder. I really do. And I think Bampton are unfortunate because the thing is the characters there never went into any of the houses. They walked up and down the street, missing out the yellow lines. They stood by a grave in the churchyard, or there were a couple of weddings in the church. There wasn't a huge amount of filming there, and there's nowhere to park coaches. You can't go and tour anywhere. You can just walk up and down the street, or you can go and sit in the church, and that's it. So for the number of people who come, there's nothing to do. We have a coach car park. We've always had a coach car park. We've got a kiosk so people pay before they come in. We've got one route in, one route out. We've got spare roads. We come off the A34. So we've been in this business for much longer, and it works for a stately home. For a village like that, I think it's often probably pretty miserable. And some of the coaches I know from here leave, and they're just driving through Bampton, which I think is bloody difficult. And I'm not sure if I were them, I wouldn't try and see if I could build a coach park on the outside of the village somewhere and then get people to walk through and go and have a drink at a pub or something. But there's no way of doing anything much at the moment. So it is more challenging for them. There's also, they did simply walk up and down. They didn't go into a house, they're private houses. So, they maybe went there once a series, but not a lot. But they usually often parked the white vans here, and then they went up to Bampton, did a scene for a day and came back again. So it worked very well because it was near here, and we have got one area of really good hard standing, which can fit all the long Winnebagos and everything that they bring. They bring a lot of kit. So I think it is challenging for them. But it's like I saw a lot of people in one of the Cotswolds villages, Bisley, and again, they're just taking photos there. So I can do it here so that if you don't have a ticket, you don't come in, because what's the point of asking someone to come in, drive in? It's all ungreen. It's using energy, it's using resources to come and take a photograph and go away. That is not a visit. That is not immersing yourself or understanding anything. So I don't do it. I've shut the gates. I've got gates to shut. It's wonderful. I think for them it is really hard, Bruno. And they're a village with many different people with many different ideas. So that's also quite tricky.
I just really want to know, like, what's your, obviously you've worked with a lot of the producers and whilst the making of Downton Abbey was happening, what's your most memorable moment from the whole series or films? I just want to hear from you, the most memorable moment about having Downton Abbey filmed there.
You should read the chapter in my book. It's chapter 3 of A Year at Highclere, and that's a really good insight into what you're writing about and what we're talking about. And on the one hand, it's my Labrador dogs who adore the catering trucks and are to be found at breakfast time, lunch and tea underneath whatever trestle tables they can find. They're always lost. I go out with 8, I come back, I have 8 dogs. But I go out with 8 dogs and I come back with 4, always. So there's that, or I'm bloody searching for them as they're searching for the bins. So there's that side, which is frustratingly hilarious every single day. The other side is, I remember at the end of series 1, Bruno, of Downton Abbey, and there was a beautiful scene on the lawn. Series 1 was long thought about by Julian Fellows. He had his beautiful arc of a story ending with the First World War. And it was a scene on the lawn outside Highclere, and Hugh Bonneville was wearing a linen jacket as Lord Grantham, and they were carrying a tray and they were figuring out how to try and serve drinks or something. I can't remember. They'd asked me some questions about it. And somehow, with that late summer's day, it was in fact shot in probably July, and it was supposed to be August, but it had that same late summer's day feeling about it. It was a really beautiful, iconic, moving, and deeply emotional scene, because in reality, you knew what was coming next. So there were some extraordinary scenes which I'll never forget them shooting, and hilarious moments as well. Still, I think a really wonderful scene.
Yeah, I remember how that impacted me as well.
And that's a wrap. We've reached the end of our show today. Lady Carnarvon, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an honour to speak to you about screen tourism and your responsibilities and duties.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. It's been fascinating to understand your role at Highclere Castle, aka Downton Abbey. Big shout out to our listeners. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll be heading into the capital city, exploring how London has been impacted by its close encounter of the third kind. He wears a blue duffel coat, red hat, and an unsatiable hunger for marmalade sandwiches. Guest speaker next week will be Bethan Jones, an academic from Cardiff University. She specialises in how the UK government can utilise screen tourism for both economic gain while preserving and promoting British culture and values. Bye for now.